tonight on a special election edition of the Northwestern News Report.
The race to 270. As polls close across the country, we keep our eye on the results and what they mean.
Plus, abortion, immigration, and education. How these key issues are playing an important role this election season.
Here in the studio, our panel will be with us throughout the night, weighing in on results and key voting issues.
And beyond the White House, we keep you updated on critical races for seats in Congress.
All that and more tonight on the Northwestern News Report Election Special.
It's our 2024 election coverage
right now.
Good evening and welcome to our election special. I'm Ari Wozniak.
And I'm Lance Wilhelm. We have a lot to get to tonight. We begin as polls close in Illinois and in several states across the nation in what's shaping up to be one of the closest presidential races in U.S. history. We start off tonight with the first 5 states of the East Coast already being called by the Associated Press. Kentucky's 8 electoral votes, Florida's 30, West Virginia's 4, and Indiana's 11 votes have gone to former President Donald Trump. And Vice President Kamala Harris has Vermont's 3 electoral votes. Now, these are the first races to be called in what might be one of the closest races in the history of modern polling. Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, all crucial swing states we're watching, and we're all within a close margin of error. And arguably, no more states are more important than Pennsylvania and Michigan, with 19 and 15 electoral votes respectively. Polls across the board have both states essentially tied. Now, it's important to note that the presidential election results probably won't be called tonight. In 2020, the race wasn't called until Saturday. But we do have our eye on some other critical races across the country. One thing on the table, which party will control Congress? We're monitoring congressional races in states like Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, West Virginia, and Nevada.
To give us some more information on what exactly is up for grabs, NNN's Brandon Kondratz is live at the big board all night to break down the numbers for us. Brandon, what should we be paying attention to right now?
Thanks, Aria. That's right. I'll be popping on throughout the evening to take us through the races you need to watch. We'll be talking about a lot, breaking down some crucial things about this year's voters that could influence the races, keeping an eye on some key counties and states in the road to 270, and breaking down our local elections here in Chicagoland. Some races we're watching this evening. Obviously, the road to 270 electoral votes between former President Trump on the Republican side and current Vice President Kamala Harris for the Democrats. These numbers coming from the latest New York Times Siena poll here. Both candidates have been hitting it hard on the campaign trail these past few weeks because I'm sure, as you can tell from these numbers, the race is looking razor thin. Both candidates are basically tied, 46% for Trump and 47% for Harris. Some key counties we're keeping an eye on this evening. Many of these fall in the Rust Belt swing states, states that have been a toss-up between the past 5 or 6 presidential elections. But there's a few counties that have pretty consistently voted in line with who ends up winning the entire race. This is the county breakdown across the nation from 2020 for reference. In Wisconsin, we've got Door County right over here, the pinky finger of the state. This is going to be the one we're keeping the closest eye on. It's predicted America's president since the turn of the century. Door County voted for George W. Bush in 2000 and 2004, Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, Donald Trump in 2016, and Joe Biden in 2020. In Pennsylvania, Erie County, right up here, voted for Democratic candidate John Kerry in 2004, so not predicting that one. But the county voted for Obama twice in 2008 and 2012, Trump in 2016, and Biden in 2020. So predicting the last 4 elections instead of those 6. And in Michigan, Kent County, right over here, predicting the last 5 elections since 2000. Bush twice in 2000 and 2004, Obama in 2008, Trump in 2016, and Biden in 2020. So the only miss was 2012 when it voted for Republican Mitt Romney. So that's those key counties that are kind of be guiding some conversation as the AP continues to call results, as they already have been this evening. Also on our radar, some battleground Senate races across the country. The reason these all races here are battleground is twofold. Number one, the incumbent isn't running again in some of them, so it truly could go either way. But more importantly, the electoral votes in the race to 270 in these states have flipped between Republicans and Democrats in the last few presidential elections. In Arizona, Democrat Ruben Gallego and Republican Carrie Lake. In Wisconsin, Eric Hovde for the Republicans, and Tammy Baldwin for the Democrats. Over in Pennsylvania, which we'll certainly be chatting a lot about later, Democrat incumbent Bob Casey and Republican Dave McCormick. In Ohio, Republican Bernie Moreno is up against Democratic incumbent Sherrod Brown. In Nevada, Democratic incumbent Jackie Rosen and Republican Sam Brown. And finally in Montana, Democratic incumbent John Tester and Republican Tim Sheehy. And finally, two races we're keeping an eye on here in Chicagoland as well. The Chicago School Board. For the very first time, Chicagoans will get a direct say on who gets elected to the school board. Previously, the mayor appointed the people who sit on the board using a nomination process. 31 candidates are running in 10 geographic districts. Each represents nearly 300,000 residents apiece. We'll be talking about what this could mean for the city a little bit later on. Very historic. And in the 9th District of Illinois in the Federal House of Representatives, Democratic incumbent Jan Schakowsky is running for re-election. She was elected to the United States House of Representatives in 1998, meaning she's currently in her 13th term. So we're going to keep an eye on that. That's what we've got our eyes on tonight. It's a lot, but we'll be with you as those results start rolling in. Back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Brandon. We'll be monitoring those races and more tonight.
Let's turn back now to some local elections and hear from voters and poll workers here in Evanston. NNN's Allison Miller is live from the Noyes Cultural Arts Center, where polls just closed moments ago. Allison, can you give us the rundown there?
Absolutely, Lance. So we're here at Noyes Cultural Arts Center, which is one of 25 different polling locations in Evanston. Polls opened at 6 a.m. here and just closed at 7 p.m. I'm here with Liz, who is an election judge. Liz, can you tell me a little bit about the work that you did today?
Yeah, so election judges make sure that the polls work how they're supposed to. So we check people's voter registration, and here in Illinois you can register same day. So we did same day voter registration, help people with their ballots. And then I got to go run back in after this and certify the things and close up and everything. So just everything that makes a poll run, you got to have workers.
Got it. And what was the turnout like today?
It was really busy, steady stream of people all day. We had a big rush before work hours, like 6 to 8. Little lull then I think when some people went to work, and then it was just steady the whole rest of the day. We even, at 6:59, we had 3 people running in to get in line right at the end too, so.
Got it. Why did you decide to be an election judge for this election?
You know, I've never been an election judge. I've never actually been very politically involved really at all, but this election meant so much to me, what's on the line for our country. So in the last few months I decided to sign up and do some things, so signed up to do the training to be an election judge. I wrote postcards to swing states. I made some phone calls. So just doing things, this just means a lot to me, and the outcome means a lot to me and my family, so I wanted to get involved.
If you feel comfortable sharing, who did you vote for and what were some of the key policies or topics?
Go Harris! I do feel comfortable. Okay, first off, I have 2 daughters, and seeing a woman being president, something I've wished for my whole life, and I think Donald Trump is unhinged and unsafe and unqualified, and so I just want to stop him.
All right, and then what are you doing after this?
You know, I want to go home and watch results, but I'm probably going to go home and take a nap. I've been here since 4:45 in the morning.
All right, well, get your rest. Back to you in the studio.
Right, thank you, Allison. A lot of excitement coming in over there. We'll look forward to tracking those votes as they roll in throughout the night.
And though Cook County might not be the most critical spot for this year's national election, there are plenty of local positions and ballot measures that stand to make an impact on residents. NNN's Cassandra Brooke has more on how Cook County weighs in.
In the upcoming election on Tuesday, voters in Cook County will be voting for the next president, but they will also be voting for various local positions. Despite the low national local election turnout, Lois Peterson, a longtime Evanston resident, says she thinks Cook County is different.
People on the North Shore have a real sense of responsibility, civic responsibility, yeah. And that's part of the history of this town.
Western's second year and Winnetka resident Christy Vlahondreas disagrees.
So, I mean, talking to some people, they're always like, I probably won't vote for them because I don't know anything about that, but I think, I don't think it's that popular.
In the last presidential election, voter turnout was 71.1% in Cook County. However, in the consolidated 2023 election, which elects mayors, alderspersons, commissioners, trustees, and board members for various institutions and municipalities, voter turnout was 13.8%. In the upcoming Cook County election, there are 4 positions up for grabs: Cook County State Attorney, Cook County Clerk, Cook County Circuit Court Clerk, and Metropolitan Water Reclamation District Board. All of the positions up for grabs are currently held by Democrats, but despite the strong blue hold, Peterson says voting still matters.
I like to vote to support school levies, capital improvement or operating levies, whatever it is, and also for local officials if I know something is going on.
While Vlahandrea says that for her, it is personal.
A lot of laws are being made for, Cook County and stuff, and that impacts me, and I've lived here my whole entire life, so whether it be some type of educational law, I've gone through the school system, it's very important, so I think it's just important to vote.
From Evanston, Cassandra Brooke, Northwestern News Network.
Thank you, Cassandra. And after the break, we're moving in next door, digging deep into the swing states that surround Illinois. Stay tuned.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
My narrative, since I've been locked up and kind of made my transition, has been like redemption, accountability.
When I come into the classroom environment, every individual that sits amongst me takes education seriously.
Welcome back, folks. Sorry about this. Welcome back. Throughout the night, we'll be focused on 7 swing states. We're still tracking a lot of those results at the moment. Victoria Ryan is here in the studio to give us some background on those states. Victoria? Oh, excuse me. I'm being told in the control room that we have some breaking results coming in. This looks like there's 95 electoral votes for former President Donald Trump and 35 so far for Vice President Kamala Harris. South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Oklahoma are for Trump. And for Harris, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. We're going to Brandon now here at the wall, I think.
Ellie, what am I?
Brandon, go to the wall, go to the wall.
Sorry about this, folks, some technical difficulties. And Brandon is here back in the studio to break down some of these results. Brandon?
Yeah, of course. I am still kind of working with my results team on trying to get some of these together here. Things are coming in fast. The AP is they're really calling stuff quickly tonight, which is kind of unexpected, right? I think that we were kind of, anticipating that we were going to see some polls closing. Things are going to take a little while, but these states are being called quite quickly. So Alabama, Mississippi going to Trump, and we're actually going to go ahead and pass back so I can get out there and keep looking at results. Back to you on the desk. Thank you.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
ready, set, yellow.
And welcome back. Throughout the night, we'll be focused on those 7 key swing states that we talked about earlier that will likely decide this election. And now NNN's Victoria Ryan is here in the studio to give us some background on those states. Victoria?
The battleground states in this election are Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Let's break them down from most electoral votes to least. First, we have Pennsylvania, arguably the most important state in this election due to its high number of electoral votes. Both campaigns have been spending quite a bit of time and money in this state. You've got the solidly blue counties with cities like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Scranton, and Center County, where Penn State is located. Up north, you'll see Erie County. It's kind of located between this triangle of Buffalo, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, and Pittsburgh. This is your run-of-the-mill, Rust Belt, blue-collar swing county that voted heavily for Obama in 2012, then flipped slightly red in 2016, and back to blue in 2020. This county has the ability to influence the entire state of Pennsylvania. Now heading south to Georgia, a state that flipped blue in 2020 and gave Democrats crucial electoral votes. Democrats are looking to do that again, and it all comes down to the Atlanta metropolitan area, which makes up 40% of the state's electorate. Gwinnett County is northeast of Atlanta and has had a huge increase in vote share for the Democrats in the past 15 years. Clinton won the county by 6 points in 2016, and Biden won by 18 points in 2020, one of the reasons why the state flipped blue. Now, nearby North Carolina holds a unique spot in this election. It has only voted blue once since 1980. This was in 2008 for Barack Obama. Trump won the state by only a slight margin in 2020, but rapid population growth in urban areas in the state has turned North Carolina into a swing state, with counties like Wake and McClellanburg being solidly blue with high populations. New Hanover County on the coast, which is home to Wilmington, flipped in 2020, and Democrats are hoping to increase their lead here this year. Back in the Midwest, Michigan continues to play a crucial role in the Electoral College. This state is about as purple as it gets, with Trump winning the state by an average of only 2 votes per precinct in 2016. Democrats are hoping to hold on to the state this year. Kent County on the state's western side, which is home to Grand Rapids, is historically a strongly red county, but Republicans have been slowly losing their grip since 2012, with Biden winning the county by 6 points in 2020. This is the fourth most populous county in Michigan, so it may come down to this county to decide the state's outcome. Not far away, Wisconsin is another traditional blue wall state that flipped red in 2016, but voted for Biden in 2020. Dane County is home to Madison and the University of Wisconsin, and high voter turnout in the area may help the Democrats. However, the so-called WOW counties outside of Milwaukee, that's Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington, are solidly red and crucial for the Republicans to win back the state. Out west, we are seeing a lot of campaign stops from both candidates in Arizona and Nevada. While they each do not have a lot of electoral votes, they are very important for the outcome of this election. Maricopa County, we heard a lot about this in 2020, is Arizona's most populous county and home to Phoenix. This county swung red in 2016 and then blue in 2020. However, the slight margins each time give both parties a chance to take it this year. And Washoe County, Nevada, which includes Reno, voted blue in the last 2 elections. While Biden gained traction in 2020, the margin was still very close. Republicans need to flip this county in order to take Nevada. There are also 4 toss-up Senate races this year, 3 of which are occurring in swing states, and all of which are currently held by Democrats. This is one in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Ohio. Between the close balance of power and the retiring of Joe Manchin, which will most likely cause his West Virginia seat to flip red, just one of these seats flipping to the Republicans would be a shift in who controls the Senate. Any combination of these states could define the election, and it all comes down to these swing counties. Back to you, Lance.
All right, thank you so much, Victoria. We'll have much more coverage of those swing states as the night continues. But right now, I want to bring Brandon Condritz back into the studio for an update on the race to 270. Brandon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Lance. Here we are. We kind of got some new results coming in. As it stands right now, Trump has got 95 electoral votes and Harris has 35. Kind of thinking about statewide where we're at, Trump has South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Those are those new calls coming back from what we kind of talked about previously. So again, Trump at 95 electoral votes, South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Harris has Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island to contribute to that 35. So again, no kind of big surprises from where we were at last time, but those are kind of where we're standing right now. So nothing new to report on my end. Back to you all on the desk.
All right, thank you, Brandon.
Operation Swing State sends volunteers from Illinois next door to states like Wisconsin and Michigan, hoping to turn out Democratic volunteers. Patrick Hanley co-founded the group and helped organize the volunteers ahead of their final outreach push in the final weekend before the election. Hanley says they've knocked on over 150,000 doors and talked to over 50,000 people.
Chicago volunteers will make the difference in this election.
It will be decided just a couple hours away.
While Illinois itself isn't going to be a swing state, our electoral votes are going to go to Kamala Harris. Our volunteers can make the difference in places like Milwaukee or Kalamazoo, which aren't too far to travel for our folks.
NNN's Julia Narvaez Mungia is in one of those states tonight. Julia, what's the scene been like in Wisconsin?
We actually talked to earlier on said it was much busier in the morning, but we're learning that nearly half of Kenosha County voters
It makes a difference. Every vote counts.
You know what, it looks like we're having a little bit of technical troubles right now, but we appreciate you being out there, Julia, and we'll keep an eye on those votes as they roll in.
All right, and Northwestern students from swing states like Wisconsin are determined to make their vote count. NNN's Michaela Potter spoke to some of these voters. Here's what they had to say.
In preparation for November 5th, swing state voters carry a coveted ballot, making the issues they care about a top priority.
I think the issues that are most important to me are healthcare, so making sure that everyone and older people too have access to healthcare, and gun control.
Voters finding ways to get their ballots home, knowing that in this election, every vote counts.
I heard that North Carolina is more of a swing state than Illinois, so, you know, voting for more like blue policies would be more impactful in North Carolina compared to Illinois.
Many students mailed their ballots early with help from NU Votes in the Evanston Civic Center, who provided early voting access through November 4th. These are students like Adam Durr, a Michigan voter and the president of NU College Democrats.
I'm very interested in politics, very engaged in the political process, so it feels good to really feel like my vote makes a big difference.
As ballots are being counted, student swing state voters say they desire to see the issues that matter to them reflected in the results.
Abortion, economics, but in the sense of supporting the middle class and not giving tax cuts to the rich.
Students casting their ballots in hopes of swinging the election. Michaela Potter, Northwestern News Network.
All right, Michaela, thank you. After the break, we bring in our student panel to hear what they're watching for tonight. Stick around.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. We've heard it time and time again. This election is unprecedented. Political science professor Daniel Galvin has covered everything from the party convention system to war powers. He says unprecedented presidential actions in recent years have forced him to change his curriculum. NNN's Allison Miller sat down with Galvin to discuss his thoughts on the stakes of the election.
I'm here with Professor Daniel Galvin, who is the Director of Undergraduate Studies at the Political Science Department at Northwestern University. Professor Galvin, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So what makes this election different than ones we've seen in the past? How is this year different?
Well, I mean, I think, every election that rolls around, the candidates say this is the most important election of our lifetimes, right? Each election is obviously hugely consequential, but I think one of the reasons that this election may well be one of the more consequential elections in our lifetimes is that the two candidates are so starkly different, right? They present really different styles and modes of governing, and so the consequences of the election are super important, right? And so that's why the outcome matters.
What do you think is at stake in this election particularly?
Yeah, so I mean, each candidate presents a really different vision, right, of how they plan to use presidential power. And Donald Trump has been very clear that he's willing to use presidential power in ways that we haven't really seen before in American history. And he did use executive power in ways that we hadn't seen before in American history during his first term. The other, though, I think that the looming issue with respect to the implications of this election for our democracy are about the whether or not Americans feel like they can trust election outcomes, right? And the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, Trump supporters have done a really thorough job of making people worry that the election won't be fairly conducted. That will just further undermine people's faith in our election procedures. So this is what we in the social sciences call democratic backsliding, right? When people don't have faith in the democratic institutions any longer. So and it results in political violence. That's a real problem, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this is a trend that you see continuing beyond this election year?
I sure hope not. The political violence, there's no place. Yeah, this is what every politician says. There's no place for political violence in the United States, and obviously that's true, right? I mean, that's the downfall of our democracy. So,
do you think that people should continue to be worried into the future, past election night, for future elections? What's your take?
So I worry about the underpinnings of our democracy, the formal institutional, supports for democracy and the informal. They've eroded, right? And so whoever wins this next election, I think, finding ways to bolster our democracy and improve people's confidence in the administration of elections and in the rule of law is going to be, project number one, right? And I hope that whoever's elected tries to undertake that business.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your perspective and your hopes with us. I appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Of course. For Northwestern News Network, I'm Allison Miller.
Allison, thank you very much. The people in the studio with us now are very aware of how important this election is. It's our student panel, and they'll be joining us throughout the night. We have Adam Durr, the president of College Democrats. We have Scott Huang. He is the chief pollster for the Daily Northwestern and an NNN contributor. And then we have Clark Hanlon. He is the co-president of Northwestern University College Republicans. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. Clark and Adam, I want to start with you two. Obviously, Northwestern students live in Evanston for the majority of the year, but a lot of us, myself included, actually vote elsewhere. I'm curious if, based on what you've seen in your respective organizations, and maybe just based on what you've observed around campus, if you have any predictions for tonight, any surprises you think we have in store. Adam, I'll start with you.
So I think it's hard to necessarily extrapolate based on mail-in voting, just because Northwestern, the student body tends to skew so liberal. I think we are going to see some interesting trends with mail-in and early voting this year, though, especially compared to 2020, when mail-in voting kind of came politicized after Donald Trump attacked it as fraudulent. This year he's done the exact opposite. He's been urging his supporters to vote early, so I think we're going to see different margins with respect to the early vote. Just anecdotally, though, I've been hearing people are feeling good about Michigan, feeling good about Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Georgia, a little bit shaky. North Carolina, very much up for grabs. We'll see how that goes.
Right, and Clark, let's hear from you next.
I think Adam's right. The Northwestern student body certainly lives in a bubble. So really, we have to look outside that to find some interesting telltale signs of what might happen. The betting odds, of course, we know the polls are dead even in those important states. The betting odds, however, have Trump up at a 60% chance of winning compared to Kamala's about 40%. We hear the Amish may be coming out in Pennsylvania. Trump received an endorsement from a Muslim mayor in Michigan. So there are shifts going on in these blue wall states that we should be paying attention to.
Right. And Scott, I want to go to you for a second here. The Daily Northwestern conducted a poll a couple weeks ago now, and part of that poll was on political ideologies of Northwestern University students. What did that poll have to say about that?
Well, I think everybody's been right so far. Northwestern students are overwhelmingly liberal and politically engaged. Now, we asked students about their political leanings, and 79% of them said that they were either somewhat or very liberal. That's compared to only 6.6%, who said they were some form of conservative. We asked them who they plan to vote for, and of the voting population at Northwestern, 92% said they would vote for Harris, with only 5% for Trump. Now, students were also said they were very politically engaged. 80% said they were somewhat or very political, and 85% said that they were likely or very likely to vote. Now, we know that young people overall in the country tend to be more liberal than the broader electorate, but Northwestern is even liberal compared to that demographic. If you look at the New York Times Siena poll of the likely electorate, Harris does lead Trump among respondents aged 18 through 29. But the number is just 55 to 43%. So Northwestern is significantly more Harris supporting.
Right. So it seems like that liberal bubble that both of you sort of referred to very much in play here. Another thing I want to ask you about, Scott, a big story that's been on campuses across the country, Northwestern, of course, included is the encampment and students' thoughts on the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. What does your poll have to say about that?
Yeah, the encampment is overwhelmingly popular among the student population. That's 58% said they approved, only 20% said they disapproved. Now I have the numbers for how students plan to vote broken down by their opinions on the situation in the Middle East. Of the students who said that the US should support Israel more than it does, which is a small part of the student body, to be clear, only 5%. Harris had led 58 to 40%, so that's much better for Trump than the overall Northwestern population. Most students said that they thought the US should support Palestine more than they do right now. That's 64% of the total student body, and of them, 95% said that they would vote for Harris, with basically a rounding error for Trump. I think it's 1%.
Interesting. All right. Thank you very much for being with us. Don't go too far because we'll be coming back for you later in the night. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. When we're back, what's been on Evanston voters' minds as they headed to the polls today. Back in a bit.
But they will also be...
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city, Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Another campus organization is looking to support students to participate in the election. NU Votes is a Northwestern organization dedicated to increasing student turnout at the polls. NNN's Micah Sandy has more on their initiatives this year.
Northwestern saw some Hot Wheels this week. The NU Votes voter van. Decked out in red, white, and blue, the van offered rides to and from the Loring H. Morton Civic Center, one of Evanston's polling locations.
It's been like a fire hose, frankly. We've been getting a lot of people coming in. We've had over 1,000 people a day for the most part. We've got 13,000 people through here so far.
The van is only one of NU Votes services. NU Votes is an initiative from the University Center for Civic Engagement, helping students understand voting information about elections and register. For students still looking to make a plan to vote last week, NU Votes operated a help table at Norris in addition to the voter van. Although NU Votes offers services every year, this year's election marks most students' first time voting in a presidential election.
We definitely have bigger programming on even years, so for the midterms and presidential elections. We always try to highlight the fact that there's so many races and ballot measures on the ballot. It's not just the president and it's not just the Congress members.
For this election cycle, NU Votes also offered help with requesting absentee ballots, checking registration status, and a notary service for students whose states required notarization for mail-in ballots.
They were still sending all my ballots to the old address, so I was like, okay, well, I went to the NU vote station. I was like, hey, can I get the form to submit a new absentee ballot? I submitted it and then I mailed it because they they helped me print out the form, they helped me fill it out. Then they gave me a stamp, which is nice because I don't know who has stamps, not me.
While there might be some confusion over what living on campus would mean for your residence, you still can register to vote in Evanston. All you need to do is bring a screenshot of your Caesar account that shows your proof of address, an official form of ID such as a passport or driver's license, and you're set to register and vote on the same day. Do all that and you too can get a coveted I voted sticker. And amid busy lives, students are showing up.
We've registered thousands of students at this point to vote, and it's so empowering.
From the polls, Micah Sandy, Northwestern News Network.
Thanks, Micah. Visit nuvotes.org for a 2024 election guide, as well as additional related resources.
Another one of the biggest issues this election, abortion. NNN's Annika Sani spoke to some women on campus on why this issue matters to them. Take a look.
According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, 1 in 8 voters say that abortion is the most important issue in this year's presidential election. The Center for Reproductive Rights reports that 6 million students are attending college in abortion-restricted states. While abortion remains protected in Illinois, the nationwide threat of a ban under the Trump administration is a concern for many. Let's hear what Northwestern women have to say.
I believe access to abortion does matter because as a college woman, bodily autonomy is always at the forefront of my mind. It's at the forefront of who I vote for, where my morals stand.
The right to abortion means the right to healthcare, fundamentally. As someone who's entering healthcare in my future, as someone who's going to be a doctor, the definition of an abortion is a medical procedure.
Very vital for college women's health and for all women's health.
I've always known that I'm pro-choice, but I never really knew that I was going to have somebody that close to me have to get one. And now that she has, I'm even more pro-choice because I know how different her life would have been if she hadn't, and if she hadn't had that access to get one.
If this right gets taken away in nationwide or even in just certain states, it poses not only an ethical issue, but also a big health issue.
All of the women I talked to today described abortion policy as a primary factor in their decision for tonight's election. From the Center of Awareness, Response, and Education, Annika Sani, Northwestern News Network.
Sorry for the technical difficulties there, folks. Thank you, Annika, for that reporting. But right now we got some results coming in. Let's go to Brandon at the big board right now. Brandon, what do you got for us?
Yeah, of course, Lance. Thank you. So, got some states coming in here. We are now at, this is actually not the correct graphic, but that's okay because I've got some results for you. My papers are getting a little more crumpled as the night is going on, so maybe this will be a ball here by the end of the night. But because we got a lot of excitement in the newsroom. So, New Jersey is going to Harris. That's 14 electoral votes. 55.8% as of the last time I checked of that state's vote is going to Harris. So the AP is officially calling that again. That's 14 electoral votes to New Jersey for Harris. Also, Illinois was just called about 45 seconds ago. The Associated Press is calling Illinois, and that is going to Vice President Kamala Harris as well for the Democrats. And then for Trump on the Republican side, 6 electoral votes in Arkansas. So we've got Arkansas, state of Arkansas, which is 6 electoral votes. As of last time we checked, 36.6% is going to Trump in the state of Arkansas, and the Associated Press is calling that. And then for the North Carolina, the Associated Press is also calling the race for governor in that state. Josh Stein is the new governor of North Carolina, excuse me. And the Associated Press is predicting that and the state is going to stay blue, is what that means. So that's about all I've got. We'll go ahead and toss back to the desk. Thanks.
Interesting stuff, Brandon. We appreciate that. We're back with our panel to get some reactions here. Clark, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on what you just heard? Specifically, that North Carolina bit is quite interesting there. Obviously, some less surprising numbers in Arkansas and some other places. But what are your thoughts so far?
Right, like for those other first states that you mentioned, none of this is that surprising. We'd expect Arkansas to go the way it goes. We'd expect New Jersey to go the way it goes. For North Carolina, that maybe that's a little unexpected, but this is a state that Trump can lose and still be fine. This is not going to kill his election bid tonight.
Right, and I do want to be clear, obviously North Carolina alone will not kill his election bid, but it would be a big blow to him if he does lose that state. I believe that's 16 electoral votes. Adam, let's go to you. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I'm not surprised about the governor's race. I think it was pretty obvious that Mark Robinson was a uniquely bad candidate. I know the Republican Governors Association even pulled funding from his race a few months ago. They said they gave up hope. We are going to have to see an almost unprecedented number of split ticket voters in order for Donald Trump to make up the gap and win the state overall. However, we did see that in 2020 with the Senate race in Maine. I believe the Republican senator was reelected even though Joe Biden won the state. So that'll be interesting to watch, but I think overall good news out of North Carolina for Kamala Harris's campaign.
Right. Well, thank you very much, guys. Stick with us again and more after the break. Brandon is at the big board once again to break down the gender divide in voters. Stay tuned.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
My narrative, since I've been locked up and kind of made my transition, has been like redemption, accountability.
When I come into the classroom environment, every individual that sits amongst me takes education seriously.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. Over the past few weeks, gender has become a significant indicator of who voters will pick at the ballot box. Brandon, what can you tell us about this connection that we're seeing in the polls?
Yeah, of course, Lance, thanks. It's something the nation has certainly kind of been thinking about lately, especially today at the ballot box. Plain and simply put, recent polls show Trump and Harris could have the largest gender gap among voters ever recorded. Generally, women are voting more for Harris and men are picking Trump. Since early voting began just a few weeks ago, a Target Smart poll shows 53.5% of the vote comes from women, and a large part of them are voting for Harris. Recent polls show Trump holds a 17-point lead with men over women, and Harris holds a 12-point lead with women over men. That's a 29-point difference, so that's a pretty big difference.
And Brandon, earlier this week, there was sort of a blockbuster poll coming out of Iowa, that Ann Selzer poll.
That's a good word for it, yeah.
Yeah, blockbuster poll, exactly. And Kamala Harris was leading by 3 points in that poll, and women in that predominantly white state of Iowa were really driving that surge. What's going on there?
Yeah, totally. Iowa is one of those swing states that both candidates are keeping an eye on. It went to Trump in 2020, and it was expected to swing red this year too, which is why it was such a big deal when those numbers showed that it could potentially go to Harris. Among the other swing states, it's objectively not the most important. It's only 6 electoral votes compared to Pennsylvania's 19 or Michigan's 15. But the significance of women voters in Iowa could be a signal for voter turnout in other more high-stakes swing states like Philadelphia, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Now, Lance, some people might be asking what's causing this divide. Well, let's look at the difference in their campaign strategies for just a second. Recent Harris ads have been sending the message to women that nobody knows who they vote for. So even if their husbands vote for Trump, they don't have to. 2 women go into the voting booth, make eye contact with one another, and then secretly fill in that bubble next to Harrison Walls. Well, there are some Harris ads out there also trying to get, trying to target men and trying to get them to the polls for Democrats. She's mainly targeting women. Trump's ads, on the other hand, are targeting men, specifically ones without a college education, living in a classic Rust Belt county or state, or both. This Trump ad, called Be Remembered, says his presidency will be bigger than the Academy Awards and NFL playoffs. It shows images throughout American history before saying, quote, "He brought us together, and he can do it again." But it isn't just in the ads. Speeches at rallies these past few weeks have pretty frequently pulled in conversations about gender. Harris has called out Trump's misogynistic comments at rallies, trying to encourage women to head to the polls. And Trump has said that while he'll continue to protect women, quote, whether they like it or not, Trump says that Harris will get, quote, overwhelmed and melt down, but which could potentially kind of drive men to the polls for the Republicans. So all of this targeted campaigning and ads aside, it's still neck and neck in these crucial swing states across the country. No matter who is the first to 270, gender will certainly play a role in choosing America's next president.
All right, Brandon, thank you so much for that. It's an interesting divide that we'll have our eye on. But for now, Ari, let's go back to the desk.
Thank you, Lance. I'm joined again now by our panel. Scott, let's start with you. I understand you have some numbers for us on gender divide on campus.
Yeah, so there is a slight gender difference, but let's be clear, Harris is still popular among students of all genders. On campus, if you just look at women with a voting preference, Harris has 96% support, while Donald Trump has just 2% support. For men, that's 85% for Harris and 12% for Trump, so still high, but not as much. Now, that means that most Trump supporters on campus are men, but there's not that many of them total. If you look at political affiliation, among women, 88% identify as liberal, 8% as moderate, and 3% as conservative. Among men, it's 68% liberal, 18% moderate, and 14% conservative. Now, we've made a lot about Trump's relative popularity among young men. It's been well documented, but this is not the kind of young men that you'll find on Northwestern campus. Traditionally, these are non-college men who are sort of disaffected with institutions like college and government, not something you'll see in Northwestern data.
Yeah, and I know that in prior years, gender has played a pretty small role. Can your data explain the more significant role it's played this year? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would not say necessarily that Northwestern's campus is going to be really indicative. Again, Richard Reeves, for example, has done really he's at Brookings, has done really good research showing that outcomes for men are not necessarily tracking as well for than outcomes for women in terms of education and the economy. But that's mostly among men who are not in elite institutions like universities or big law firms or the C-suite executives. And so, if you're just going to look at Northwestern campus, I don't think you're going to see those trends as much.
Right. Thank you, Scott. And Clark, for you, I know we saw Trump this week at the Madison Square Garden rally, and where he said he is a woman's protector, whether they like it or not. I'm wondering what your reaction is to this.
I think he's speaking from the heart. I would think he genuinely believes this. He's out here saying that he is going to put forward policies that are going to protect women. This is going to be a big play for him on immigration, that he is going to cut off immigration and in doing so cut off crime. I think this is a genuine comment from him. Nothing, take it as it is.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, do you think Trump's rhetoric is appealing to women? Have you seen that in this election?
I would think probably not. I think Trump's defining characteristic is, as always, his personality. This has not changed. This was true in 2016. This was true in 2020. And this is going to, again, be true going forward. I think people whose this is not going to change anyone's mind.
Right. And Adam, for you, I'm wondering, how has Kamala turned the gender gap to her advantage this campaign season?
Yeah, so I think definitely by focusing on the issue of abortion and protecting women's right to choose. Obviously, Donald Trump has said in the past that he believes women who have an abortion should be punished. He is a proven sexual abuser. He assaulted a proven sexual abuser in court. And so I think a lot of the Harris campaign has been focusing on that and saying this is not a man who can be trusted to protect women's rights across the country. And I think it's been fairly effective.
That's all the time we have today, but thank you all for joining us.
It's just me like that, and then I'm going to ask you what.
After the break, NNN's Victoria Ryan is live at a campus watch party. What students are watching as results roll in.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. Polls started closing a couple hours ago now, and watch parties across campus are settling in to watch those results. NNN's Victoria Ryan is live in Tech, where Bridge NU, College Democrats, and Northwestern Political Union are hosting a watch party. What are you seeing over there, Victoria?
Thanks, Lance. Now, it is a wet, rainy day during midterm season here at Northwestern, but that did not stop students from showing up to this auditorium for the watch party. The main issues on their minds, issues facing students, that is the economy, housing, reproductive rights. Now, I have a student here with me right now. This is Claire. So, Claire, why did you decide to show up to this watch party?
I think as a U.S. citizen, we have some sort of obligation to vote and also have some sort of political efficacy and care about the election, as well as being like a first-time presidential voter. This election is pretty serious, and there's a lot of issues on my mind that this election could you know, transform like who, like based off of who the president is. So to be honest, I'm just here to see some like history in the making.
Yeah, and what issues are on the top of your mind tonight?
Well, of course, as like a person of color and like as a woman, you know, the reproductive rights is a big issue, like the economy as well as education. So like I know Trump was talking about like getting rid of the Department of Education, and as someone who had to switch from public school to a private school because of some issues involving that, like it is like a really big issue for me. So a lot of these topics are like pretty big.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you, Claire. Back to you, Lance.
Victoria, thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing from you as you watch party hop along throughout the night.
Environmental policy continues to be one of the biggest issues Northwestern students care about most. But what exactly are Trump and Harris's policies? NNN's Sabrina Carson joins us now in the studio.
According to a Pew Research poll on 2024 election issues, 1 in 3 voters rate climate change as very important to their vote. And thus far, 2024 global temperatures have ranked the warmest in 175 years, 2.3 Fahrenheit above the 20th century average, with a 99.8% likeliness for 2024 to rank the warmest year on record. Now, that's talking globally. Let's move to the U.S. The average temperature in the contiguous U.S. was 58.2% Fahrenheit in 2024, ranking second warmest on record since 1895, the warmest on record 2012. Now, recognizing this issue is very important to voters, what are some past initiatives and future promises Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have made toward environmental policy and climate change? Now, looking at Trump's 2016 to 2020 presidency, we can see the Great American Outdoors Act, which was the largest public lands investment in history, with $9.5 billion going into new funding to maintain national parks, forests, and associated lands, as well as permanent funding for the land and water fund conservation. He also enacted an executive order promoting energy independence and economic growth. Now, because Kamala Harris has not had her own presidency, let's focus on her contributions to the Biden-Harris administration's environmental-related policies and initiatives. Looking at the Biden-Harris administration, we can talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, in which Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote in 2022. Now, along with other non-environmentally related initiatives, the act promotes clean energy, with $8.4 billion in tax credits going toward lowering the cost of clean energy and energy-efficient updates in homes. Additionally, $265 billion in clean energy manufacturing has been raised since the Inflation Act in the private sector. Notably, as you can see, during the Trump's presidency, clean energy manufacturing actually declined. The Inflation Reduction Act also focused $2 billion to fund environmental and climate justice community change grants, which is the largest single investment in environmental history. Now, during Donald Trump's presidency, there have been multiple rule reversals, with around 150 rollbacks on environmental and climate change policies during his presidency, which include changes to the National Environmental Policy Act. However, around 29% of these have been reinstated by Biden, and around 31% remain in place. Trump also exited the Paris Climate Accord in November of 2020, stating it put the U.S. at a disadvantage. However, Biden rejoined less than 6 months later in February of 2021. Now, that is not to say there have been no environmental issues or policies that made negative impacts over the past 4 years. For that, we can talk about crude oil production. Though crude oil production decreased 8% from 12.3 million barrels to 11.3 at the beginning of the pandemic, over the course of the Biden-Harris administration, production has since risen around 12.5%, surpassing the numbers even from 2019. We can also talk about how Harris disavowed her pledge to ban fracking made in 2019. Fracking extracts oils and natural gas from rock formations. However, it is at a detriment to the environment as it pollutes air and water while endangering both wildlife and human health. Now, let's talk about some promises Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have made if they were to be president in 2025. Donald Trump has promised to boost to the oil and gas production, ending the delay of federal drilling permits and leases on federal land. He's also talked about the potential repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act. Though he notably no longer backs his previous statement that climate change is a hoax, he does not want to give trillions of dollars and sacrifice jobs. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, has yet to announce a plan for climate change and energy, though has notably said that she disavows her past plan of banning fracking. Thank you so much. Back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Sabrina.
For students who are particularly driven by the environment, SEED is the place to be. Northwestern Student for Ecological and Environmental Development, a lot of long words there, or SEED, launched a new social media series to educate young voters on environmental issues ahead of Election Day. NNN's Talia Jackson talked to SEED members to see what it's all about.
Colorado, Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Okay.
Planting the seed of environmental policies in NU voters' minds is what this club is doing leading up to Election Day.
Although environmental issues and climate change are huge issues in elections, and especially in this one, they actually haven't been focused on very much.
NU Seed started a voter series on Instagram featuring select states and candidates' stances on environmental initiatives in response to a need they saw in their community.
We were sort of discussing it in our subcommittee, just like, oh, what do we each know about our own neighborhoods, and there's definitely a lot of silence.
So doing the research and the posting began.
We've also been doing this by state, so things like big environmental issues in certain states, bills that those states are voting on, and then candidates.
Lyon says the highest stakes in this election are in the often forgotten about ballot initiatives, where voters' yes or no answers can have the greatest impact.
Things like climate change, there can be debate, but things saying like, do we want clean water? That's, everyone wants clean water.
Guadiana says the series has seen relative success drawing in student and admin support, giving many young voters easier access to environmental policy information on their ballots.
Even if it just takes a few minutes, being a little bit more informed about how we vote, I think, is really transformative.
In Evanston, Talia Jackson, Northwestern News Network.
Thanks, Talia. Keep an eye on @NUSeed on Instagram to see your state for any key environmental updates on policies for this election. Coming soon, we take you to D.C. for a look ahead into key congressional races. Stay tuned.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Ready, set, Yano!
Welcome back. Polls closed in swing state Wisconsin just moments ago. NNN's Julia Nervaez-Manguia is still at the polling center in Kenosha. Julia, what have voters been saying as they leave the polls? All right, so sorry about that, folks. Julia, sorry about the technical difficulties there. We're still having trouble hearing you. We'll try to get you back here later in the night.
All right, and in some unexpected swing state news, the race for a historically blue Maryland Senate seat might turn red. NNN's Jonas Calderon-Blum is live at the Maryland Polling Center. Jonas, what can you tell us about this race?
I'm just outside a polling place in suburban Washington, D.C. in Montgomery County, Maryland. Now, Maryland's not really a state that normally comes up in the conversation of swings, but this year the Senate race is really, really tight. Republican former Governor Larry Hogan is posing a massive challenge to Democratic Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks. I asked her about why she thinks she's not doing as well as predecessors in Maryland, and this is what she told me.
This remains a close race. We are leading in the polls, and we will continue to work to get every vote in the state. I think that the more Marylanders hear about me, my opponent had a near 100% name ID because he was governor for 8 years. It's taken a little bit more work for me to get my name ID out, but the more people hear about me, about my record, and about my positive vision for Maryland, we're earning votes every day, and I'm going to continue to work all the way through the election to earn the support of Maryland.
Early votes have already been counted in Montgomery County, and the actual live results are expected to come in after 8 o'clock tonight. In Montgomery County, Maryland, Jonas Calderon-Blum, Northwestern News Network.
Thank you, Jonas. And Montgomery County polls will still be open for another hour.
Campaigning for these critical seats starts at the root. NNN's Victoria Ryan gives us a look at how the Kalamazoo County Democratic Party is working to engage young voters.
When Harris came to town, I had buttons made up that said "Welcome to Kalamazoo" and introduced myself and said to her, "Welcome to Kalamazoo," and then I just took off from there.
While there may be no coconut trees, Kalamazoo, Michigan has been nicknamed Kamalazoo this summer by many supporters. Located halfway between Detroit and Chicago, Kalamazoo has played a unique role historically in shipping and trade. Now, the Kalamazoo County Democratic Party is looking to play an important role in a historic election.
The hope is with all of that overwhelming support, we can offset some of the more red counties around us and just really make Kalamazoo one of the counties that can really shape this election.
A solidly blue county in mostly red Southwest Michigan, the KCDP hopes their impact is felt at every level, including local races that tend to go red.
Working in those spaces at the local level means we will be able to eke out 2% more, 3% more for the top of the ticket.
To make this impact, they are looking to the youngest voters.
In 2020, that set of voters, it's close to 60% voted here in Kalamazoo County.
Michigan had the highest youth voter turnout in the country for the 2022 midterms, up almost 4% from 2018. With the YouTube series, Brat-themed Instagram, and Kamalazoo merch, the party is looking to continue this trend.
We jumped on it as quickly as Kamala HQ did, and just wanted to have our own kind of brat background.
Harris has visited the county twice in the past 6 months, once as vice president and once as the presidential nominee with Michelle Obama.
Michelle Obama began the rally by saying, "Hi, Kalamazoo," or should I say, Kamalazoo.
On election night, they plan to head to a local brewery, turn off the newscasts, and celebrate their hard work.
We won't know the results of the election that night, and that's not the point. It's to bring that kind of joy and energy.
Adorned with Kamalazoo merch, the KCDP looks to make a large impact on this year's election. Victoria Ryan, Northwestern News Network.
Thank you, Victoria. The KCDP's Toast to Democracy is currently underway. For more information about the party's work, check out their YouTube series, Inside Kalamazoo, or their website at kzoodems.org.
And Victoria has more on the Michigan beat. She sat down with the co-president of Students for Harris at the University of Michigan, Audrey Clayton, about her efforts to connect to young voters.
I've always felt, especially in these last few elections, the responsibility and the importance of being from a place that is so critical.
When did you first become interested in politics?
So a lot of people my age, my interest in politics really started during the 2016 presidential election. That was my first real introduction to presidential politics, where I had an understanding of what things meant. I started working in politics during the 2020 presidential election. I interned on Congresswoman Hillary Scholten's first campaign to represent Michigan's 3rd district, and then worked with her again in 2022.
You are from Kent County, which is one of the most critical counties and one of the most critical states in this
Yes.
year's election. What was it like growing up there, especially as someone so involved with politics?
Yeah, I think I've seen Kent County change a lot over, the course of my life and involvement in politics even. I think, West Michigan has become more blue, especially after the Trump presidency.
How does being in a swing state impact your work?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference. I think it's really exciting for students coming from places like California or New York or some of this other many states that we have students from that are, not going to be swing states that are already decided on the electoral college map to have the opportunity to register at their dorm address or their student housing address and use their vote in a place that is going to make the highest impact.
How does being a Gen Z college student impact your work, especially like in terms of the whole internet world?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that we get to have some fun with this. We know that, students care deeply about political issues, but college students, Gen Z people, like we like to have fun, and politics can feel really heavy, really overwhelming.
So you had the opportunity to meet Tim Walz when he came to
Yes.
the Michigan-Minnesota football game. If you want to talk about that and what that experience was like.
Yeah, that was an incredible experience. I worked the week leading up to it with the coordinated campaign with Governor Walz's advance team to, build a list of students and work out the logistics to be able to bus about 35 students to the airport to greet him when he got off the plane and then bring him back to tailgate. He's incredibly personable. He's, exactly like how he's portrayed. He came down, he talked to us about the weather and the football game and how excited he was to be in the big house. Governor Walz agreed to do TikTok trends with the students. And yeah, in talking to the people planning the event, they really emphasized that his main priority was just to be able to talk to as many students and young people as possible.
Thank you, Victoria. Young voters have been a big focus this election.
That's right, and most for these campaigns, social media is a critical tool for reaching these young voters. Our Jasmine Kim has more on how social media has been used for this race.
For many young voters, social media apps aren't just a place to keep up with friends or share photos. They're a main source of election information. According to a study by Pew Research Center, 52% of TikTok users regularly get news from the app, up from just 22% in 2020.
But there is kind of an energy that happens in social media that I think has allowed messages and discussion to happen among the Generation Z that may have an impact on Tuesday.
Though Harris's use of Brat Summer may be the most notable attempt to appeal to Gen Z, both candidates are posting memes, appearing with popular influencers and podcast hosts, and embracing TikTok trends in hopes of swaying young voters.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of things that I just obviously in the past haven't really seen political candidates doing, like when Kamala Harris went on Call Her Daddy.
But with the rise in social media-based political content comes an increased risk of misinformation. In response, social media platforms have taken steps to flag false information and verify political ads.
Social media can become such an echo chamber, and if that's the primary spot where you're getting your information about politics versus a more nonpartisan news source, you're only going to be seeing content that you're liking and you're saving and you're agreeing with.
Experts recommend that students use multiple sources to fact-check information and diversify their feeds by following a variety of news sources and voices.
The digital age has been pretty amazing in that it's allowed anyone to go out there and tell a story and have a voice. Unfortunately, the downside of that is that there's so many people out there who are bad actors.
Whether it's bringing new issues to light, mobilizing young voters, or simply starting conversations, Gen Z has been impacting the 2024 elections like never before. Now it's up to Gen Z as they navigate the digital world before casting their votes. Jasmine Kim, Northwestern News Network.
All right, thank you, Jasmine. I should note that following our completion of that story, Joe Rogan actually endorsed former President Donald Trump late yesterday. But we'll have to see how effective these social media strategies were, after we get a final result. Coming up, hope you're not tired of him just yet, because we're checking back in with Brandon Condritz at the big board.
That's right, Lance. I'll be bringing you an update on some of those key swing state races. Stick around.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
All right, we're back, and I'm here to talk to you about the Divide 9 group. It looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with our prompter right now. Give us just a quick moment. As for the election, let's take a look. Are we seeing anything new right now in terms of recent polls? All right, sorry, a few more technical difficulties. Okay.
Right, sorry folks.
Let's take a look at what's happening right now. Lance, are we seeing anything new?
Nothing in particular, and I will say, back to the Divine Nine, sorry about that folks, live television and we're students, what are you going to do? The Divine Nine are a group of historically black sororities. Some of them have chosen to back former current Vice President Kamala Harris, and then we did some reporting on that. Take a look. We actually talked to one of those people in one of those sororities. Here's what she had to say.
I think it inspires women. I think it inspires minorities and just everyone to pursue the highest heights.
Right, Kamala was in the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and waiting for this teleprompter to get back. So sorry about these technical difficulties.
All right, we're going to go back to Brandon at the big board for a moment to get some results. Brandon, welcome back. What do you have for us?
Yeah, of course. Well, what I have for you right now is a white screen, but what I do have, indeed, are some results for you. So current kind of electoral votes we're looking at right now, Trump with 177 of those electoral votes and Harris with 99. So some states that we're kind of taking a look at here right now. So states that have gone to Trump as of our last check, Louisiana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Ohio, and Texas. So that is kind of where we're looking at right now. Jan Schakowsky has won the Illinois 9th District, so this will be her 14th term. So that's kind of, an exciting moment happening over here in Chicagoland. Taking a look at some of those swing states more specifically, right? We're kind of keeping a close eye on those. Obviously, no calls have been made yet, but that is something that we are taking a look at. Starting off with Pennsylvania, 18% of the vote is counted from the Associated Press. Right now, we're showing 38% to Donald Trump and 61% to Harris. Again, Pennsylvania is 19 electoral votes, so this is definitely one of those key swing states, if not the key swing state for this election. So we're kind of taking a look at that. Michigan, 10% of the vote is counted by the Associated Press, 46% to Donald Trump and 52% to Harris. Michigan is 15 electoral votes, and again, 10% of that is counted. Taking a look at North Carolina, Trump with 52% and Harris with 47%. 40% counted from the Associated Press, so they're going pretty quick over there. And in North Carolina, that is 16 electoral votes. What else we got for me here? Yes, Georgia, 68% of that vote is counted in Georgia. I think that's really kind of, speaking to the power that early voting is having in Georgia. Mail-in and early voting, again, 68% counted by the Associated Press, 53% to Trump and 47% to Harris. So this is pretty close. Obviously, we are still kind of counting, and Georgia is 16 electoral votes. Do we have anything else? Anything else left to go? I don't believe so. So thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and toss back to the desk, and I'm sure we'll check back in with me here in just a sec.
Yep, thanks, Brandon, and you're right. We'll be back with you in a second, so don't go too far. But coming up after this short break, our panel returns to discuss the hot-button topic of immigration. We'll be right back.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
My narrative, since I've been locked up and kind of made my transition, has been like redemption, accountability.
When I come into the classroom environment, every individual that sits amongst me takes education seriously.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Immigration has been a key issue this election cycle, especially in some of those Sun Belt states like Arizona and Nevada, but Democrats have shifted their position in the past few years. NNN's Mila Branson has more on where the party stands now.
Thanks, Lance. Many Americans are concerned by the number of migrants who have entered the U.S. during the Biden administration. According to a 2024 Gallup poll, over half of U.S. adults want to see immigration decreased. Though migrant encounters at the southern border have fallen this year, President Joe Biden has dealt with record high numbers throughout his time in office. Republicans are playing this to their advantage, continuously slamming Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris over an allegedly out-of-control border. Although Biden pledged to loosen Trump-era immigration restrictions during his 2020 campaign, he has carried out about 1 million deportations since the beginning of 2021 through February 2024. On pace to match the 1.5 million deportations that Trump carried out over his entire term. Under Trump in 2019, total customs and border protection enforcement encounters hit about 3 million, while under Biden, the total has passed 10 million. Red and blue cities have both voiced concern over the strain migrants place on public services. In response, the Biden administration has used a carrot and stick approach, cracking down on asylum access while creating new ways for some migrants already in the U.S. to become citizens. For instance, migrants must make an appointment at a port of entry using the CBP One app in order to be eligible for asylum. Before becoming Democratic presidential nominee, Harris avoided the topic of immigration. Now, Harris wants to revive a bipartisan Senate bill that would further restrict asylum access and hire more border agents, immigration judges, and asylum officers. On the other hand, former President Donald Trump promises to mount the largest domestic deportation effort in U.S. history if elected. Immigration has been key to both candidates' campaigns throughout the race, but we'll see how far it takes them as we count votes tonight. Lance?
Thank you, Mila, and our panel is back. So building off of Mila's reporting, immigration stands as one of the most important issues for voters this election, and while both candidates advocate for stricter border policy, there's a divide in their campaign's approach to the issue. So I want to ask all of our panelists, how are you seeing differences resonate with young voters?
Oh, would you?
We can start with you, Scott.
Awesome. So we didn't in our original poll get to ask students about the specific issues that they thought were important, but what we did do is we followed up with some of the respondents afterwards. So we asked 20 respondents, and they gave us some written responses on what they thought was important. And I'll just say this: immigration was not one of them. This is an incredibly liberal-leaning school, as we've talked about. And so the immigration, the topics that did come up for them were mostly reproductive rights and abortion. That it was climate and sustainability, and then to some lesser extent, the economy in terms of economic equity and LGBTQ+ rights and Israel and Palestine. So I would not say in general that immigration is going to be on top of mind of Northwestern students or students in general, given the sort of demographics of how students think about politics, but you know, so if you were to look to students to get an indicator of what issues are important, I don't think you'd get a good read of the electoral as a whole.
Interesting. Adam, let's hop over to you. Let's talk about what a Kamala Harris win would look like for immigration. You know, she talked about pushing Congress to pass border security bill that the Republican and Democrats drafted earlier this year, which created a pathway for citizenship for undocumented immigrants. For voters who argue this will incentivize others to immigrate, how is your party addressing these concerns?
Well, first of all, the bill that was put forward in June would do a lot to strengthen our border security. It would put 1,000 additional Border Patrol agents on the southern border. It would add 100 additional immigration court judges, and it would put fentanyl detection machines at every border crossing at the southern border. Seems like a pretty good bill. Donald Trump tanked it. He called Republican senators and told them not to vote for it because he did not want to hand Joe Biden a legislative win during an election year. I think that's just case in point that Donald Trump is only in this for himself. On the other hand, you have Kamala Harris, who's a border state prosecutor. She has prosecuted human traffickers. She has prosecuted the Sinaloa cartel, drug traffickers, arms traffickers. So she's going to bring that experience and that toughness to the office, while also recognizing that we need to reform our immigration system to make it more humane. We need to offer a pathway to citizenship for the dreamers and undocumented immigrants who have been here without and living in the nation for many years, contributing to our nation, contributing to our economy without committing any crimes. On the other hand, Donald Trump, his border policies have been characterized by cruelty. Cruelty is the point, as you said, with regard to family separations. And I think we hopefully will see the voters reject that.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And now, Clark, I wanted to jump to you and ask, you know, Trump's stance on immigration emphasizes a tighter border security and limiting illegal immigration. So while this has strong support from some voters, how does the Republican Party ensure that humanitarian issues are also taken into consideration?
Sure, I think if we want to talk about humanitarian issues, we should talk about the crime that's coming up with these immigrants across the border, the crime that they bring with them, because Venezuela has record low crime. They're emptying their prisons and sending them all up here, right? So if we want to talk about humanitarian issues, let's talk about the people that are being harmed by crime in Kamala Harris' home state of California. Crime skyrocketed under her. This is something that, there's two sides to this humanitarian problem. There are innocent people coming across the border. There's no reason to treat them cruelly. But there are bad people coming across the border too. criminals, gang members, terrorists, and we need to apprehend them because they are obviously causing problems in this country.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists. That's all the time we have for tonight. I appreciate you being here. And now we'll go to a break. Thank you. You know, up next, we're going to see how recent Supreme Court rulings could affect the presidential race.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Ready, set, go!
Welcome back. While we've spent a lot of time tonight focusing on the presidential race, let's not forget about the fight for control of the Senate. NNN's Brandon Condritz is back to check in on those Senate seats. Brandon?
Thanks, Aria. So those key Senate races that I was kind of, discussing earlier, again, we're kind of taking a look at Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Montana, and West Virginia. Let's start with that Buckeye state of Ohio. So it looks like Republican Bernie Moreno is currently leading in Ohio. Yes, Republican Bernie Moreno is leading in Ohio. 50% of the vote is going to Moreno, and then 45% to Brown. 58% counted by the Associated Press. That's kind of what we're looking at there. Heading over to Michigan next, Democrat Alyssa Slotkin is currently winning in Michigan in the Senate race. 12% of the vote is counted by the Associated Press. 54% is going to Slotkin and 44% to Rogers. And then going over to Wisconsin, Republican Eric Hovde is currently leading in Wisconsin. 53% of the vote to him and 46% of the vote to Baldwin. 11% is in by the Associated Press. And one more quick update kind of on an electoral vote where we're looking at presidential on that race to 270. Trump has 178 electoral votes. We added on one since last time we checked in from Nebraska's 3rd district, and Harris is still sitting at 99. Aria?
Several key and controversial issues over the past 4 years have been decided on not in the halls of Congress or in the White House, but in the Supreme Court. NNN's Jasmine Kim has more on some of those rulings and how they might have influenced voters tonight.
Thanks, Lance. Democrats have been demanding reform of the nation's highest court, and the 2024 presidential election shows a clear party divide on recent Supreme Court decisions. Ever since the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization in 2022, abortion rights have been one of the most prominent topics of debate. Based on Gallup's annual values and beliefs poll, a record high of 32% of U.S. voters say they would only vote for a candidate who shares their views on abortion. On the other hand, 45% of voters consider abortion as just one of many factors, while 19% say abortion is not a major issue. Reflecting her party's beliefs, Harris supports a reinstitution of the rights ensured in Roe v. Wade, federal right to abortion, while Trump claims that he would not sign a federal abortion, but states should be allowed to enact any restrictions abortion rights could be a decisive factor in key swing states, especially for women and young voters. The Supreme Court's recent rulings on affirmative action is another divisive decision. This election, in the Students for Fair Admissions v. Harvard Supreme Court case in 2023, the Supreme Court ruled that race-based affirmative action in college admissions violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Currently, schools cannot consider race as a factor in admissions to ensure equal treatment under the law. According to a 2023 Pew Research Center study, Republicans are more likely than Democrats to support the Supreme Court decision. 74% of the Republicans disapproved of selective colleges and universities taking race and ethnicity into account when making admission decisions, while 54% of Democrats approved. Trump has expressed approval of the Supreme Court ruling, receiving support from the Republican Party, but Harris called this decision, quote, a denial of opportunity, end quote. And lastly, this year, the Supreme Court allowed the conviction of individuals involved in obstructing an official proceeding during the January 6th Capitol attack. This legal charge applies when someone disrupts Congress's certification of electoral votes. With Donald Trump back on the ballot, January 6th is a polarizing issue that resonates with voters concerned about democracy and rule of law. Democrats generally back this decision to hold those involved in the Capitol attack accountable. However, Republicans question the scope of applying the charge. Tonight we'll see where these issues take the candidates back to you in the studio.
All right, Jasmine, thanks for those insights. After the break, we talk to Evanston parents about which issues matter most to them.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. National policy changes could have a big local impact. Leading up to the election day, NNN spoke with several local small business owners to gather their perspective on what this election could mean for Evanston's vibrant small business landscape. NNN's Callie Proctor has more.
Here in Evanston, it's not hard to find local restaurants, shops, boutiques, and other services. But with the election coming up, and with it, potential changes in policy, are local small business owners worried about the effect that it may have on their businesses?
I am hopeful and scared at the same time. It's mixed feelings.
This election, candidates have brought economic policies regarding taxes, tariffs, and regulations to the forefront, with some changes promising to aid or hinder small businesses. However, Evanston business owners don't think the election will have any large impact on their day-to-day profits.
I don't know that it'll necessarily affect the way we run our business, because we really run it based on supporting independent designers and really supporting our customer in what they're seeking.
For Nina Barrett, founder and owner of local bookstore Bookends and Beginnings, her small business is affected by more than just economic policy.
You know, when I look at a world that could result from, you know, from this election, I see a lot of book banning could potentially result, and that's not a culture that I want to see.
Despite the potential impacts, economic or otherwise, that the results of this election could bring, many local business owners in the area are confident that it won't have a big effect on the Evanston marketplace.
So I think that people like to come in and commiserate and share good news and maybe talk about things that aren't so good. So politics have definitely come up, but it's a comforting place for people to come here. So I don't think the way we operate will change.
In Evanston, Callie Proctor, Northwestern News Network.
Thanks, Callie. We'll continue to report on Evanston small businesses as the year progresses.
And for Evanston parents, the future of their kids' education is a top priority, especially with former President Donald Trump's proposal to cut federal oversight. NNN's Taylor Hancock takes us into the community to hear their concerns.
Since his 2024 campaign kicked off in 2021, Trump has floated around the idea of eliminating the Board of Education.
And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C.
Many Evanston parents are concerned with what this could mean.
I think it's a bad idea to eliminate a federal agency that was established for good reasons.
Heather Manova has a 5-year-old and an 18-year-old enrolled in school in Evanston. She says that she is zoned in on education policy this election because the next 4 years are a crucial time for her kids.
And so he's just started kindergarten, and so we have both ends of the spectrum as far as like what's going to be happening with our children and their future that is like immediately happening to our family. So it's very, very important.
Manova says she worries about the loss of many school programs.
I think that, you know, a lot of times when it comes to big changes, some of the programming that gets cut first are things like arts and music educations and things like that. And when you're not.
In early June, the Evanston Skokie School District 65 decided to close the Bessie Rhodes School of Global Studies due to financial difficulties. Myrna Garcia, whose 5th grader attends the immersion school, has experienced this firsthand.
How are you going to tell children in the middle of the school year that to fix a financial issue, to fix the lack of teachers, would be to give them little notice and put them to their respective middle school?
Garcia is keeping a close eye on candidates' education policies.
I think there's something about really looking at the candidates, what are their policies, and I want to hear the rationale, and I want to hear like how has that played out? Because if they're caught up here and not really know the implications in the classroom, in the lives of young people, then there's a disconnect there.
With the shutdown, Garcia says she's concerned as both an educator and a parent.
So what worries me is that if the erosion of education, public education, of support for teachers, making them feel maybe disposable or not important, is really troubling. I feel like the biggest stressor in human life is not knowing, and also not having trust, because they kept changing their word on this.
From Evanston, Taylor Hancock, Northwestern News Network.
Taylor, thank you, and NNN will continue to cover the situation surrounding the Bessie Rhodes School as it develops.
It looks like our Victoria Ryan is at another campus watch party. Let's check in and see how that's going. Victoria, tell me about this watch party. What's happening?
Thanks, Aria. Now, I'm here at the NU College Republicans watch party,
And there's a crowd of about 20 people here gathered to watch, and energy's really high. People are really, really positive. And we talked to some voters, and they said that the issues that matter most to them here are abortion, gun rights, and foreign policy, and the conflict in the Middle East. Back to you, Aria.
Thank you, Victoria. After the break, Brandon is back. Another update on how those swing states are doing. Stay tuned.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
My narrative, since I've been locked up and kind of made my transition, has been like redemption, accountability.
When I come into the classroom environment, every individual that sits amongst me takes education seriously.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. Though most races are still up for grabs, some districts might seem predetermined because of gerrymandering practices from both parties. NNN's Mikey Capianco is live in the studio to explain how gerrymandering will affect the election. Mikey?
Partisan redistricting, or gerrymandering, is a consistent part of U.S. elections. It's a practice of drawing the lines of electoral districts to manipulate the results towards one party. And in this year's congressional races, gerrymandering is once again in play, giving Republicans a sizable advantage heading towards Election Day. Now, there have been some recent attempts to stop gerrymandering. In 2022, the Freedom to Vote Act stalled on the Senate floor. The bill was aimed at expanding voter registration and limiting the removal of voters from voter rolls, banning partisan gerrymandering with a two-step process. Take a look at the map. The states colored in red could win seats for the House for Republicans, the states in blue for the Democrats, because of gerrymandering. Texas and Florida have the biggest potential gains for the Republicans, with 5 seats each. Other battleground states could also have House seats go red. Let's take a look. Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Georgia. And for the Democrats, New Jersey and Illinois can be big, big wins. So there is gerrymandering on both sides, but the map's bias swings in favor of the Republicans. North Carolina shows the biggest effect of gerrymandering. In the 2022 midterms, voters elected 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats to the House. But in that same election, a conservative majority was elected to the state Supreme Court. They took down the anti-gerrymandering protections, and this year, the new map can see North Carolina elect as many as 11 Republicans and 3 Democrats. So how are politicians fighting back this fall? Well, one Democratic state Senate candidate in North Carolina's heavily gerrymandered District 37 is running on a campaign of inevitable loss. Kate Barr's message is simple: clear eyes, full hearts, can't win. But as her website says, she might as well raise awareness on the issue while she can. It's yet to be seen to what extent gerrymandering will have an impact on this fall's House elections, but one thing is for sure, it's still very much a big deal. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Mikey. We appreciate it.
And voters are focused on several key issues, with inflation and the economy taking first priority. Healthcare policy also proves to be a key factor. NNN's Mackenzie Kirkwood is with us in the studio to break down the facts and policy differences of both the Republican and Democratic candidates.
That's right, Aria. Healthcare affordability remains a top issue for voters this year, second only to the economy, with 76% of Harris supporters and 55% of Trump supporters saying it's very important to their vote. The next president is expected to impact the cost of healthcare, prescription drug prices, and the accessibility to affordable healthcare. Both candidates' healthcare policies track records can be a little murky, so here's what we know. Former President Trump has been vocal on Truth Social about his disdain of the Affordable Care Act. The Trump presidency attempted to partially repeal the ACA by passing the American Health Care Act. The plan would have repealed the individual and employer mandate, amended Medicaid eligibility, and weakened protections for patients with pre-existing conditions. However, it didn't pass the Senate. During his presidency, Trump decreased advertising for Obamacare and increased the sale of lightly regulated insurance plans that were cheaper but had fewer benefits. Biden reversed several of these changes, and it's clear that a Harris administration would continue to do this. Trump is against an Obamacare extension, while Harris wants subsidies to be permanent, which seems like an unlikely promise if Republicans are controlling Congress. What's fascinating is that repealing the ACA is not mentioned in the official 2024 Republican Party platform. While Trump has vowed to never ban birth control, his administration cut funding from the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program, which has allowed at least 58 million women to access birth control with no out-of-pocket costs. Trump has also taken responsibility for the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Biden-Harris administration has strengthened contraception access and affordability under the Affordable Care Act through Medicare and Medicaid and the Title X family planning program. Both candidates agree on one thing at least. Prescription drug prices are too high for Americans. Even without a support of Congress, the next president can influence these prices significantly. Trump approved Canadian drug imports to try and lower costs, and Harris wants more drugs to apply to Biden's new legislation that allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the drug makers. A huge factor in the future of American healthcare lies with which candidate's party will control Congress. With a Democratic Congress control, more drugs could be covered in Biden's legislation for Medicare to negotiate drug prices. With a Republican control, Trump hopes to limit the reach of the Affordable Care Act and its subsidies. The Trump campaign's National Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, told ABC News, quote, "As President Trump said, he will release more details, but his overall position on health care remains the same: bring down the costs and increase the quality of care by importing competition in the marketplace." Prescription drug prices are expected to decrease under both campaigns' initiatives, but their approach and Americans' access to ACA benefits are significantly different. We'll see how healthcare plays in the election booths tonight. Aria?
Thanks, Mackenzie. We'll see shortly how healthcare will affect this election.
All right, and Brandon, one last time tonight, what's your final big board update for us?
One last time, here we are, Lance. Thanks so much. So here is what we're looking at. We're going to go ahead and check back in on those swing states that we were kind of, keeping an eye on throughout the night, see what's happening there. So in Pennsylvania, 20.8% of that vote is in from the Associated Press. Harris leading right now, 55% to Trump's 45%. And again, Pennsylvania is 19 electoral votes, so still a little ways to go in that key swing state, but that is where we stand as of right now. Moving on next to Michigan, here we are, 13% of the vote in by the Associated Press. Harris leading in Michigan, 53% to Trump's 45%, and Michigan is 15 electoral votes. So again, still a long way to go in Michigan, but that is kind of where we're standing as of right now. Not a big change from the last time we checked in, but thought we would give you another update. Moving on now, let's see what we've got coming up next to Wisconsin. 19% of the vote in from the Associated Press. That's 10 electoral votes up for grabs. Right now, Harris leading by a very slim margin, 50% to Trump's 48%. So that's kind of where we're at there. North Carolina should be up next. Here we go. 59% of that vote is in by the Associated Press. Trump leading by 3 points, 51% to Harris's 48%. And again, that is 16 electoral votes up for grabs there. And finally, we should be checking in Georgia. 76% of the vote in Georgia. That's pretty interesting. One of the things that I have definitely been keeping an eye on. And so we're kind of nearing the home stretch in Georgia for sure. 52% to Trump and 47% to Harris. Looks like we're kind of reporting across the state. Looks like we've got kind of results from across the state in Georgia, and those results we're kind of getting there. And then looking at kind of broadly across the nation, here we are electoral vote-wise. Trump sitting at 188 and Harris at 99. The difference, Harris has not changed since the last time we checked in, but the difference in Trump's electoral votes, Missouri has been called, and that is going to Trump. So we've got a lot to call. Polls are kind of closing across the nation still, but that's all for me. Thanks so much. Back to you at the desk.
Brandon, thanks so much for all your hard work tonight. And when we return, we'll be joined by our panel one last time to wrap up the night.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
All right, thanks for coming back with us. We have our panel here for one last time to give some last reflections on the results so far. I'm going to go rapid fire through a couple of them. Interestingly, Wisconsin has just started leaning red for the first time tonight. I believe that's a state that Kamala Harris was leading in until moments ago. The other Rust Belt states, Michigan and Pennsylvania, still leaning blue, but those southern swing states, North Carolina and Georgia, still leaning towards former President Donald Trump. I want to get some final thoughts, and we got to go relatively quickly. Clark, what do you think about tonight so far?
I think this has been a strong showing for Trump. He's got that momentum, even in Pennsylvania, even in Michigan, right? These started out as huge margins in favor of Kamala, but that's been steadily dropping as more of that vote comes in. And again, he's been cleaning up in the other states, which we expected him to perform more strongly in.
Right, and Clark, to be clear, if Kamala Harris loses North Carolina, Georgia, and Wisconsin, it'll be a very tough road to 270.
Now, Adam, tell us how you're feeling. What are your reflections on tonight?
Yeah, so disappointing news out of North Carolina and Georgia. I think those are probably lean, if not guaranteed, for Trump. But I'm optimistic about Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin still.
Wonderful. Well, thanks to the panel so much.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. While vote tallying will most certainly continue, we here at NNN are unfortunately out of time.
From all of us here at NNN, thank you for spending some time with us on this historic election night. I'm Aria Wozniak.
And I'm Lance Wilhelm. NNN will return with regularly scheduled programming next week. Good night.